365, we making up plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. Sport all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.
Get ready. This summer, the Arena League Sports is on ASAP Network. Tune in live on either the Tiki Live or Roku app, as well as your smart home TV.
And welcome to the latest edition of Real Talk. I am Mr. Bond Chronicles, your host, and I got Kenny and Sean with me. Fellas, how we feeling tonight?
Doing well. How you guys feeling?
Good, man. Always great to be on.
Lovely. Heck of a day. A lot going on since we were on Thursday night. We are still yet to have a Ben Simmons sighting, which we were talking about, but we have a bunch of people on the news, and we start with a Tom Brady sighting. Tom Brady has decided that after 2 months with his wife and kids, which he does every summer, he is not ready to settle down and be a stay-at-home dad. So he has decided to return. However, Tampa Bay has already lost a couple free agents so far. So ultimately, guys, I'm going to start with y'all. What are y'all takeaways from this announcement? Was it a joke all along? Like, what the heck's going on? Sean, we'll start with you.
So when all this news first broke that Tom Brady was considering retiring, I never honestly thought he was even going to consider it. I never thought he was going to retire. But when he did, I was like, man, it still felt surreal to not have Tom Brady in the NFL. I mean, he's been there pretty much my whole life that I've been watching the NFL. I was like, this just doesn't feel right. So then the news came along that he wasn't done. I do think the NFC getting a little bit weaker with Russ going to the Broncos. Pretty much the AFC is very, very strong. And just they have Aaron Rodgers with the Packers, and that's pretty much it. I mean, there's other good teams, but Brady probably saw it as an opportunity. Like, man, I can really have a good shot at running this back one time. So, I mean, I'm a little surprised, but I'm not super, super surprised because in my mind, it never really dawned on me that he was really done.
Gotcha. No, I definitely can agree with that. I think when we first heard the announcement here on ASAP, we jumped on and did like an immediate reaction, and I was on. And I said the same thing, even though I am 33, about to be 34, for the better part of my like young adult life up until this moment, like Tom Brady's been a part of it. So it was kind of surreal. I'm hitting that age in my life where a lot of my childhood heroes and people of lore, some of which are passing away, others are definitely retiring or at the end of their career or transitioning into other things. So no, it was kind of crazy, but I said on this network and others, I thought he should have been MVP. I didn't think Aaron Rodgers necessarily deserved it because they had the same exact record and Brady had better numbers. So I didn't really see the runaway train for Rodgers, given, difficulty, given everything that happened with AB. But he played great as far as I was concerned. And so to see him walk away the way he walked away with Matt Stafford and that pass to Cooper Kupp just didn't feel right. And I would say I'm glad to see that he is back. I agree. I think you made a great point, and we've talked about it on here that the NFC was pretty weak. And I think he sees an opportunity to run it back. If he can get, a couple of pieces, make sure that offensive line stays intact because he ain't running nowhere. I think he sees another chance to go win a championship if you just have to beat one AFC team in the Super Bowl. But I'm happy to see it because I think he can still play. Kenny, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that this is definitely the shortest retirement probably in NFL history, that's for sure. And I got to give a shout out to Ryan Clark. He tweeted yesterday and had me cracking up. and I'm paraphrasing. He basically said Tom Brady got some bad kids. That's why he's back. So I just thought that was hilarious. But I think the bottom line is, and you guys kind of talked to it, he was still playing. He's still playing at a very high level. I think that's the biggest thing. He realized that he still has something left to give to the game. And I think, for the most part, when you see guys retire, it's when they have nothing else to give to the game. And this just basically tells us that he still has something left to give to the game, and he wasn't ready to give it up. And I think, he was doing it for family reasons, but clearly his heart wasn't into it. He wasn't really, sold on. He really didn't want to retire. He was retiring for the sake of his family. So I think that's what we saw. And I think his family was just like, you know what, man? And he might have been, he might have been a little grumpy. He might have been a little miserable on the house. And maybe the fan was like, you know what, if you're going to be like this, man, just go back and play. You know what I'm saying? So, because here's the thing a lot of people don't realize is that when you're an athlete like that, you have such a routine. You have such a regimented lifestyle, or regimented, just the way that you go about doing, with your career. And so it's all about meetings and practices and working out. And when you stop doing that, man, it's almost a shock to the system. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what, I think that's the biggest thing that Tom experienced. And he just realized that, he wasn't ready. And so, kudos to him, because like you guys said, the NFC, there's definitely, no leading candidates. Of course, you got the defending champs in the Rams. Mm-hmm. You got the Rams of Green Bay. Other than that, who else would you really say is a definite contender? Maybe Dallas, which has questions, and I'm a Dallas fan. So, the NFC South is a mess. The Falcons are bad. Who knows who's going to be the quarterback in New Orleans? Who knows who's going to be the quarterback in Carolina? So that's a division that's easy to be had. Mm-hmm. So like you guys said, I totally agree. I just think he saw that this was a great opportunity to run it back and make a deep playoff run, because it ended on a bad note.
Kenny, to that point, I know you joked about Ryan Clark and the kids, but by all accounts, this was a Gisele decision. Like, she's been applying pressure for years. So I'm sure there was a conversation that was had, and it must have happened pretty quickly to go from retiring to unretiring. The conversation didn't happen yesterday. So, like, what do you think changed for her that she was like, you know what? It's better that we do this one more time, at least.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, like I said, I think she's, and this is, of course, is me just speculating, I think he probably was just a miserable person. Like, he was just a miserable, he had a miserable existence. And I think that she saw, just how it could, and of course, again, I'm speculating, how empty he was, maybe, how, grumpy he was around the house. How, maybe he wasn't as engaged as she thought he was going to be, being in retirement. Maybe that also played a factor in it. But I think at the end of the day, man, I just think she saw that he just wasn't ready. I think that's the biggest thing. And I'm sure, in that conversation, it had to be, he had to just put his cards on the table and like, honey, I'm just not ready to retire. And I think she just, probably had to accept that. And because, I don't think there's any way that he does this without her blessing. I don't think there's any way that he unretires without, her saying, go ahead and do it. So like you said, I'm sure they had some type of conversation. I'm sure he had to put his cards on the table and just let her know that he just wasn't ready.
I'm almost wondering if he kind of didn't want to leave his teammates out to dry, because he kind of made his decision fast. Chris Godwin's coming back with the franchise tag. I'm just wondering if they saw like the field of quarterbacks isn't super great. So maybe he was like, I really don't want to leave these guys with no quarterback out to dry. I played with these guys, so let me give it one more try, and maybe we can go try to get a championship. I'm just speculating, but I feel like he's the type of guy that may consider something like that.
That's possible, because, honestly, I don't think that they ever stopped, communicating, because, even at the combine, Jason Light was talking about, we're leaving the light open for him. So even after he retired, I think the line of communication stayed open, and they were still, conversing. throughout this, throughout this time. So I don't think that it was something that the door was ever closed to. And so I think once the Heat maybe gave them a little inkling in terms of maybe I may change my mind, I think they went with the full court press and just let them know, hey, if you want to come back, the door is wide open for you.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that takes us to another situation where there's another guy that's trying to come back, and there could be a need for Antonio Brown in Tampa Bay, but because of the way you left the last time, that door might not be open. That team was a player. What's that?
I think those bridges are burned. I don't think he's able to go back there.
Right, but that's my point. Like, I feel like this would be a prime opportunity with Godwin on the franchise tag and things like that. That would have been a great fit to come back to had you just handled your business, got your surgery. You could be running it back this year with a championship contender team, and now you who knows what's going to happen with you and all the things you're doing, and maybe trying to buy the Broncos or what have you. But it's just one of those things that you got to be careful what you do with people, and more importantly, what you do with memorabilia. So I don't know if you guys are aware, but
with their last football, whoa, what a bad investment.
Mike Evans, for the second time in Brady's career, threw away the ball that would have been super relevant. And this was supposed to be Brady's game-ending, career-ending football touchdown pass. And someone sold it for $500,000. The next day, literally 12 hours later, Tom Brady says, just kidding. I don't know what the standards are for that. Can you say, just kidding, I don't want? Can you stop payment? Like, how does that, you're shaking your head. Like, how does that work?
That's a great question.
I mean, that's an investment. That's the risk you take, right?
Unless you wrote a check, that's about the only way you're gonna be able to get your money back is you put a stop payment on that check. Otherwise, you're stuck.
I'm going to assume if you're giving up $500K for a football, you probably have some good money anyway.
Yeah. And then I'm sure that they did a ACH. I'm sure it wasn't any type of check transaction.
Yeah, that got to be one of the. We talked about the bet Ridley made, but this is also a pretty bad situation.
Yeah,
life comes at you fast, to say the least,
man.
But coming at you fast, we had some traction on the bad man, as people call him, Aaron Rodgers. I don't think has a new deal yet, as far as we know, but he has said that he is planning to come back to Green Bay. As we've all talked about, the NFC for all intents and purposes is wide open because there was only 1, 2, maybe if we want to go with Kenny, 3 teams. So given that there wasn't a ton of competition, there was two, there you go, 2 in the possible. So given that, what do you think Aaron Rodgers' thought was finding out that Tom Brady's coming back to Tampa, not potentially another team or not in the AFC? We'll start with you, Sean.
Obviously, I don't think that he was necessarily happy about it. I mean, it's not like they're in the same division. They both pretty much have a cakewalk division. Like we've said a couple times on the show now, the Rams are pretty much the only team that's with those two in the NFC, in my opinion, and then maybe the Panthers if they're able to get Deshaun Watson. But that's a big maybe. So I'm assuming Aaron Rodgers wasn't super happy about it. I mean, they've had a good history. They've played a bunch of times. I know they have big respect for each other. I know he's probably happy for him. But Aaron Rodgers, I mean, the Packers have a lot going on. They lost Darius Smith. They re-signed Preston Smith. And now they have Devontae Adams saying he's not going to play on the franchise tag. And you have guys like Christian Kirk getting $21 million a year. So who knows what Devontae Adams is going to ask for? Maybe $40 million.
Man.
But I mean, I'm sure he wasn't super duper pleased about it because, like we said, the NFC without Aaron Rodgers, I mean, without Tom Brady, it's 100% a cakewalk, other than the Rams. So, I mean, I still think they were both playing at an extremely high level. I'm just happy that they're both going to give it another try.
Yeah, Kenny, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with Sean. I definitely think I don't think that he's thrilled. That's for sure. Um, because again, it definitely makes the road to him getting back to a Super Bowl a little tougher. Um, but I think he's more concerned about what he has coming back. And like Sean alluded to, you got some questions that need to be answered. You have to take care of Devontae Adams because he had, like Sean said, he said he doesn't want to play in the franchise tag. And you see that the market that's being set there, that means he's going to get at least $25 million a year. So you're looking at 75 to 100 million that you're going to have to give this guy. So I think that his even in terms of the contract, it's going to be interesting to see what the final numbers are on his contract once it's signed, because this is going to say a lot about who Aaron Rodgers is as a person. Like, what do you want your legacy to be? Do you want to be known as just the guy that's the most skilled quarterback in NFL history, won Super Bowl? Or do you want to be known as a guy, that won multiple Super Bowls, won multiple MVPs? Like, it makes a difference. Like, when you say multiple Super Bowls, multiple MVPs, as opposed to one Super Bowl, like, that makes a difference in terms of how your legacy is perceived. So it's going to be interesting to see what that contract number is and see if he gives them some wiggle room or gives back some money to help them be able to build out that roster.
I do believe they said that whatever his contract was, usually the first year you save a good amount of money. It's usually backloaded.
Right.
So I'm sure in the first year he'll save him money, but they lost Valdez-Scantling as well. I've seen he's testing the market. So we don't even know who their wide receiver 1 or 2 is going to be at this point.
Exactly. I think Lazard is back. I think he's under contract, so he'll be back.
He's not a 1 or 2.
He's in 3 at the best.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just saying I know that he'll be back in Adams, so they definitely going to have some work to do.
Yep.
Yeah, and as we can kind of transition a little bit into obviously NFL free agency, but I would say I guess Jacksonville is taking the Los Angeles playbook, but the problem in the Los Angeles playbook is they were getting people to take less money. Like the Tampa Bay LA playbook is you get some veterans, to play for under market value. The
Correct.
Jags are going significantly above market value. Even Washington, we lost our guard to them. I'm watching the Clippers Cavs game. Is a hard foul. But like they're just throwing money around, I guess, to distract from the terrible offseason. And I guess they say you can't accuse us of losing if we just spend all the money on everybody. But I mean, it's great to spend that money on Kirk for Lawrence. I think that's important. But they seem to be just going nuts with overpaying. And I'm sure I know the Packers are like family owned or owned by the people, but whoever their president of operations probably called Shad Khan, like, what the heck are you doing? Like, you've just made Devontae Adams, like y'all said, at $25 million might be cheap if Kirk's getting 20. He was a number 2, maybe even a number 3. Right. Behind Green and Hopkins.
He was a number 3 because he was behind AJ Green, in my opinion.
So if you get that kind of money for him, like if I'm Devontae Adams' agent, I'm sitting back and we gonna slow play this as long as we got to.
Let them keep setting the market.
And we've already seen that they're willing to capitulate to whatever and above and beyond what Rodgers wants. So if Rodgers says that he wants him, like you gotta get him. So it sucks to be in Green Bay right in that Green Bay front office. I'm sure they're pissed based on how this offseason has already played out. Sean, what are your thoughts?
So what the Jaguars are doing, in my opinion, is that's exactly what they are doing, is they're trying to make the market – they have a lot of money to spend. They're trying to make the market harder for these low-end players, for teams to load up on good players without paying a high price. That's what they're trying to do because they have the money to do so while they're still trying to get Trevor Lawrence some help. They got Evan Ingram. They got Christian Kirk. They got Brandon Sharif, the guard, who I thought that was a pretty good signing.
No, he's good. Yeah. He's definitely solid.
And they franchise tag Cam Robinson, which tells me that they're most likely going Hutchinson in the draft as long as they don't move back and load up on some more picks. But, in my opinion, that's exactly what they're doing. I think they've done an okay job. I mean, I'm not paying Christian Kirk $21 million. I probably wouldn't pay him $15 million. But I think they have like a crazy amount of cap space, and I believe you have to spend a certain amount of cap going into the season. So that's exactly what they're doing, is they're making it harder for other teams to try to sign free agents that are more strapped to the cap. Like usually the the contenders are usually more strapped for the cap than they would be, like the Jets and Jaguars and Giants and such. So yeah, I mean, I think so far the Chargers have won free agency though. Just in my opinion, adding
That's what
Jason Jackson.
I was gonna say that's where I was gonna go next. So you want to kind of go along with that, like what do you got? What do you think of that? That's a lot of money. I was surprised New England just let him go.
Well,
but
to be honest, I think that's kind of a steal for a corner of his caliber. I think he's led the league in picks since he's been drafted into the league. What is it, like $16.5 million a year? About, I think, $40 million guaranteed, 5 years, $82 million or something like that. I mean, Marlon Humphrey. Right. I'm a Ravens fan. Marlon Humphrey gets $20 million a year. I'm not saying he's Marlon Humphrey caliber, but for a number one corner that's a big playmaker, I mean, $16 million for a contender team is kind of a steal in this market.
Yeah, 5 years, 82.5 for JC.
I honestly think that's probably one of the best contracts I've seen, but the biggest deal I've seen this free agency. But I've liked him since Maryland. I may be a little biased. But yeah, they added him. They obviously added Khalil Mack opposite of Joey Bosa. I mean, they're loading up to try to beat the Chiefs and obviously now the Broncos and even the Raiders. So, I mean, they're all in. They're kind of taking somewhat of a Rams approach while Herbert's still on his rookie contract. So I think the Chargers have been the winners of the free agency, which hasn't even technically started yet. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think that speaks to, you know, if you're Russell Wilson and you just got traded to Denver, it's like we already knew the division was going to be tough because of the offenses. And now the defenses are starting to ramp up. Denver obviously has a really good defense, but the Chargers last year couldn't stop a nosebleed. So now that they're adding, you know, they'll have pressure up front and coverage on the back end. Pressure's on Justin Herbert. Like, you're on this rookie deal. You got the offensive weapons. I think they re-signed Mike Williams, I believe. Keenan Allen's been under contract. They got, you know, solid running backs if they can stay healthy. By all accounts, there's no excuses other than your division is just atrocious with talent.
They re-signed Mike Williams too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So everything's really there, but you feel like you say that for almost every team in the division. And a team like the Raiders who went into the playoffs last year, their turnaround for Josh McDaniels, the pressure's on him too. Like, you walked into a situation taking over a playoff team, but now that division is just a gauntlet to say the least. So if you don't go 500 in division, your record can look really, really bad, really fast.
Sure.
Poor Russ went from the hardest division in the NFL back to the hardest division in the NFL now.
Right.
Yeah. And so I just think pressure's on anybody in that division, whether you're a coach, whether you're a quarterback that's been moved or shown up there, like you got some work to do. So Derwin James is in that secondary along with Samuel Jr., who I really like. So Los Angeles took a huge step forward, to your point, Sean. You got to go for it. And when you see the other LA team going for it and finding success, I think there's even that much more pressure to have to pull the trigger. Kenny, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the Jacksonville part, what's interesting about that is, excuse me, they're giving starter money to guys that are not really top tier talents. Like, you know, to me, Christian Kirk is a second or third, you know, tier receiver. Evan Ingram is a second or third tier tight end. I will say that Scherf is a high quality offensive lineman, so I will give them credit for that. But I think the other pieces are really, you know, second and third tier. But I think it's really more so because, like Sean said, because they have to spend within that, you know, they have to spend to a certain percentage of the salary cap that they kind of had to overpay. But I wish they would have kind of, and I don't know, maybe it speaks to what the free agent market is for, you know, for skill positions and things, you know, for those, you know, skill positions, because it's not really a whole lot of talent out there in terms of free agency for those two positions. So I think, you know, they kind of were stuck in a rock and a hard place. But, you know, it's an upgrade of talent, and that's really what they need here in Jacksonville is they need an upgrade of talent. Like he had really no weapons. He had really nobody to throw the ball to. So he was just put in a tough situation, and, you know, he's getting his brains beaten. So I'm happy that he's got, you know, like Trevor Lawrence has some some guys that can actually catch the ball and actually stretch the field. We know Christian Kirk is a speedster and can, take the top off of the defense. And, Evan Ingram, for all of the issues that he has sometimes with his hands, he can be a weapon, when he's right, when his head is screwed on straight. So I would like to see them do one. I would like to actually see them add another running back. I like Robertson, but I think he's better in a tandem as opposed to being just the single guy, even though they didn't really utilize him as well as they should have last year, which had more to do, I think, with Urban Meyer than it had to do with his skill set. But I just think they did upgrade it, but like you guys said, the Chargers, man, that's a scary situation that they're building out there. And I think that Ray, you made a great point about this is really going to be a referendum on Justin Herbert, because everybody's been lauding this guy in terms of his talent level, in terms of his skill set, and people are talking about he's a generational talent, but you haven't been in the playoffs. So this is the year. There's no excuses now. You got to put up or shut up. And this team has to make a playoff run to justify all of the hype that he's been receiving. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, this is the first day of free agency, so I'm sure it's more things to come. As a Cowboys fan, I got to say I wasn't happy. I'm not really thrilled with DeMarcus Lawrence getting an extension. I don't know what I guess hopefully that's a cap thing where he's just giving us some salary cap relief, because I don't think he did anything to earn an extension. He's been injured since he's got his money. He hasn't been able to stay healthy and hasn't been able to stay on the field. So I'm not sure why they gave him an extension. I hope again it's a salary cap thing. But then signing back Michael Gallup and then trading Amari Cooper. Gallup is coming off an ACL injury, so hopefully he'll be back healthy. But then this puts pressure on. We talked about it the other day. It's going to put pressure on CeeDee Lamb, him, and Gallup. They're going to have to really step up. And then Cedric Wilson signs with the Dolphins, and I hated to see him go because he really made plays when he was on the field. Mm-hmm. So the Dallas wide receiving core is in flux, so it's going to be interesting. This, like I said, this is the first day of free agency. I'm sure we got some more dominoes that are going to come down. So I think we're off to a pretty good start, but I'm sure there's much more to come, and we'll still have to reserve and see who actually won free agency. But just going off of what has happened thus far, definitely the Chargers are the winner early on.
No, I definitely agree. Kenny, I know you were talking about Jacksonville and getting another running back. You don't have faith that Etienne can come back and be a contributor?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about him. Yeah, I totally forgot about him. Yeah, I totally forgot about him. Yeah,
that would be the wide receiver. I heard he may be taking some snaps at wide receiver as well.
Okay, which makes sense because he was really great out of the backfield in terms of
catching the ball out of the backfield. Talent on the field. So
and you want to and like you said, bro, you want to put as much talent on the field as possible in as many positions as you can. And that's been the whole challenge in terms of Jacksonville, is they haven't been able to put a lot of skill position weaponry on the field. So the more the merrier.
And so we've talked about, obviously, the NFC West to a certain extent, AFC West to a certain extent. I would say maybe the second hardest division is the AFC North. And Kenny, you talked about the Amari Cooper trade, where they seem, considering what Houston gave up nothing. I can't remember. There was a receiver that got a bunch of something, and it's evading me at the moment. But given that he is, by all accounts, a number one receiver, I would say he's better than Christian Kirk to me. To get him for those amount of picks, is that a win for Cleveland, or what was Dallas's thought process? They just want to get rid of him that bad.
Yeah, I think it was a salary dump more than anything, because if you looking at that deal, that's not really getting a whole lot back for a guy that you would say is a number one receiver. So I think this was a salary dump more than anything. And to be honest with you, I think the biggest thing was that I don't think him and Dak really had great chemistry. I think Dak had better chemistry with CeeDee Lamb than he did with Amari Cooper. And then Amari Cooper started kind of chirping about it towards the end of the season. He started, complaining that he wasn't getting his touches. And I think that, that also played a role and played a factor in why he got traded. But I'm surprised because I heard that there was that Jacksonville had a deal for him, and I'm surprised they didn't pull the trigger on that deal, because if you put him with Christian Kirk and Etienne and Robinson, you got something to work with. So I'm surprised that Jacksonville didn't make a better offer, because that's not, was it 5th and 6th round picks, like swaps of 5th? That's not a lot. So if it's true that Jacksonville, was trying to make a deal for him, I'm surprised they didn't offer something better.
Sean, what do you think about the Cooper trade? And then I'll also add, since we're on that division, what do you think of the Trubisky signing for Pittsburgh?
All right, so I want to start off by saying I'm a diehard Ravens fan. Go to all the home games. So this is my specialty. I want to say. So obviously I'm not happy that the Browns got Amari Cooper, but they have literally nobody. They have Donovan Peoples-Jones, Jarvis Landry. That bridge was burnt. He was getting cut, especially after they traded for Cooper. So probably what happened is the Browns will probably approach him like, you're cutting Cooper anyway. He saved you $19 million. I know other teams are probably offering you a 6th and 7th. We'll up it and give you a 5th and a 6th. And they probably were like, we might as well take something because we're cutting him either way. So why not take the picks for it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's a good pickup for the Browns. I'm not huge on Baker Mayfield. I'm not a huge Baker Mayfield believer. I may be biased, but you've seen what happened with Odell there. I mean, now Jarvis Landry wants out, and he was chirping, and he has a track record of being a really good teammate and always defending his quarterback. So, I mean, I almost feel bad for Amari Cooper, because he went out of a situation with the Cowboys. I mean, he might not have been happy, but he was still getting targets. I had him on my fantasy team. I know he was getting targets, but he just wanted to be the number one. So at least there he can be the number one. It was a good move for the Browns. I guess it was a good move for the Cowboys. They save a ton of money. I mean, he was leaving anyway, so it didn't really matter what they got for him. It was either that or nothing. Mm-hmm. And then what was the other thing? Was Mitch Trubisky, right?
Yeah.
See, people. I'm obviously friends with a lot of Ravens fans. They're happy that the Steelers got Mitch Trubisky, obviously, because he doesn't have the best track record. But I honestly think he's a pretty decent fit there. I think he's going to be better than Ben was last year. It's not really saying much because he can throw the ball more than 15 yards. But given the proper situation, I think Mitch Trubisky can be okay. I mean, I can't remember. Didn't he play last year a couple games for the Bills when Josh Allen couldn't play, or when he was resting or something? I think he played a game, and he did.
I think he got a game.
Yeah, I think at the end of the year when he was resting
or something. Yeah,
and he did fairly well. I don't think this automatically puts them as above the healthy Ravens, hoping that we're healthy this year, or the Bengals. I mean, maybe above the Browns, depending on what other moves they make. They have some money, but I don't think it was given the quarterback market. I don't think it was bad. It was a bad move by the Steelers. They're not really the type of organization that's going to try to go out and get a Deshaun Watson with all the question marks still around him with whatever may happen with these court cases still civilly. So, I mean, it was either him or Jimmy G. I mean, they're probably about the same. Jimmy G has some playoff. I mean, Jimmy G may be a little better. He has some playoff wins, but he's probably way more expensive. So now you can probably go draft a Kenny Pickett or what's his name, Malik Willis, and maybe let them sit under Mitch Trubisky, or maybe they light it up training camp and you have Mitch Trubisky as a backup. But
I mean, all depending on how long the contract is, because I don't think they announced what his contract.
I think it's a 2-year deal, but I didn't see the money.
2 years?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I would probably say it might be like $11 million a year. I don't know. I'm just throwing a number out there. Nothing crazy.
Yeah. So, Sean, let me ask you a question. Since you're a Ravens fan, and we've been talking about this, Ray and I'm just curious what your take is. How do you feel about the lack of a deal for Lamar Jackson, and how the negotiations have kind of been at a slow pace? How do you feel about it?
So I believe in our GM. I believe he's going to get it done. I do think that first of all, Lamar doesn't have an agent. His mom is his agent, so that already, be it as it may, makes things a little more difficult. And then at times he feels like, as well as his fans, we feel like they haven't done the best job putting weapons around him. I mean, we did take Rashad Bateman in the first. We have one of the best tight ends in the league, but other than that, I mean, I'm not sure he's a huge fan of Greg Roman. There's been a lot of reports he's not a huge fan of Greg Roman, and he's not going anywhere. I think we get a deal done, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much he wants. I'm assuming he's going to want $40 to $45 million a year in this market. So maybe we franchise tag him and hopefully he goes crazy and earns himself a crazy big contract, $50 million a year or something. But I'm hoping we get a deal done because we could use the extra cap. But apparently, all the reports say that we're working at his pace and we're going to get something done. It's never been a question. Like all the stuff about us, about him leaving and going somewhere else, I definitely don't see that happening.
Fair enough. I definitely think it'd be a long shot that he leaves. I would say contracts with quarterbacks haven't played out well for anybody. And I think Baltimore is
especially the longer you wait.
Right. I was saying, and Baltimore can run into the issue that Dallas ran into with Dak when Goff and Wentz got their deals first. So there's like Allen's already got his deal. Mahomes got his deal. So because of the timing, I feel like Baltimore's in a position where Lamar's got an MVP, Allen doesn't. So you can't come in below Allen. But Herbert would be up next. Matt Stafford might restructure his. We're waiting on what Rodgers gets. I think the longer y'all wait, and there's not much you can do, but the numbers just get bigger, especially with the elevated salary cap. I don't think it's in your best interest. If you can, you want to get this done before all these other quarterback deals come in because they're not going to be less.
Another thing that's a little rough with the situation is obviously he's coming off of an ankle injury, and his game is being able to move in the pocket and throw the ball. Hopefully that's not going to affect him long term, but even before that, he was coming off of a year where he was significantly down from the year before. So he's going to want a certain amount of money, but we may say, well, you didn't play very well this year, so we're going to need to see you play better to pay you that amount of money. So I don't know. The Ravens front office has a track record of being able to get stuff done. We usually one of the better front offices in the league. So we'll see. It is a very interesting situation.
And to throw another name in there is Kyler Murray. If Kyler Murray, somebody goes and throws him a bunch of money, that argument will go down the drain because Lamar is clearly a better version of Kyler in every stretch of the imagination. So definitely something to look forward to. Free agency technically hasn't started, but it's all the tampering period or whatever that I don't really understand how that works. But we did talk about it. You mentioned him earlier, is Deshaun Watson. And so I've been pretty vocal, not overly vocal, on how I believe the situation has been handled. I was shocked at the outcome of the grand jury. The fact that I think it was 9 cases they said, and there wasn't enough evidence for any of them to go to trial. That was really telling to me. And for a league that typically seems to be really good at gathering information and hiring private investigators and all of that, it just seems like a huge miss that no team had any inclination that this could come. And if they did, why no one made a move? Because as soon as that announcement went out, teams popped up. Mm-hmm. And so clearly there's an interest even without the civil things being settled. And I know he's going to meet with Carolina and New Orleans. I'm really shocked that those are the only 2 teams that are looking. If I'm the Giants or the Jets, I don't care who's at quarterback. Like, bring Deshaun to the New York market. Especially the Giants. I don't know why they aren't waiting outside of his door for him to come out and send. If we need to send Saquon or whatever we need to send to Houston to get him, like, that seems like a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. But I guess my question for you guys is, how did quote-unquote NFL teams miss this? Or were they just in the anomaly for NFL teams being overly cautious as to why nothing happened with Deshaun for an entire year? And then we get for lack of a better term, a dud in the criminal case. What do you guys think kind of contributed to that? I'll start with you, Kenny.
I think that the teams were taking a wait and see approach. I think they were waiting to see how this was going to play out in the courts. But to your point, I don't think that we ever thought that there was any criminal, that there was ever going to be any criminal aspect to this because he was never charged to begin with. So I don't think that was the concern about the criminal aspect. I think that they were waiting to see how the civil piece was going to, play itself out, and then how it would affect in terms of him being maybe disciplined by the league. I think that's what teams are waiting for. I think that they're just waiting for all of this to be settled and to be adjudicated in the courts, and so that they can find out when they're going to have them available. Because I don't think it's a matter of teams not being interested. They're just waiting to see is when he's going to actually be able to be on the field. I think that's what's been holding everything up. So I think the faster that this gets taken care of, I think the faster that this trade gets done, because it's clear that teams are interested and teams are ready to make it happen. I think they're just taking a wait and see approach to see how this thing gets played out in the courts.
Sean?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think it was pretty much teams didn't want to be in the spotlight with so much uncertainty. I mean, people legitimately thought he would never play football again. And then after all that time off, you don't know what type of football shape he's in. Now, to your point, I mean, he's probably a top 5 quarterback when he plays. So there's a lot of teams that could use a quarterback. They already ruled out the Colts. They said they're not trading in the division, so I don't blame them. I'm a big believer not trading in your division.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think we ultimately see him on the Panthers. I really think we ultimately see him on the Panthers. But yeah, to your point, I do believe that it was just teams waiting to see what was going to happen because it's a big risk to take. I mean, they're going to want a huge haul for him, and rightfully so. Like, he's top 5 player in the league. So I don't think it's done.
Go ahead, Kenny. I'll let you go.
No, I was going to say, I want to ask you guys a question. So if it's, with the report saying that it's Carolina and New Orleans that he's meeting with, if you're Deshaun Watson, which team do you think is the better situation?
With no Sean Payton, I will go Carolina as long as, and I have the no trade clause, as long as you're not trading me for McCaffrey. If McCaffrey stays, then I think I can work with that better than, I mean, Kamara's pretty good too, but
and you got Michael Thomas coming back.
Do you have Michael Thomas coming back?
You don't have any cap room.
As far as I know, that's what it seemed like. That was the understanding. At least that's what Keyshawn Johnson has been saying. And that's his nephew. So anybody knows it'll be him.
Okay.
I think that Carolina makes more sense. I don't know how the Saints are going to. I believe they're still negative in cap space. They made some moves. I mean, they were like negative $70 million. So, and they pretty much. So I talked about it on Real Talk on the other show. They pretty much brought up an interim coach because they're pretty much like, we're going to just get our cap right and we're going to just coast until we can get our cap right, and then we'll bring in maybe one of these young coaches and start a rebuild with Sean Payton gone. With the Panthers, I mean, this is probably Matt Rule's last chance. He's going to give everything he can to get Deshaun Watson. I think you may have to include Christian McCaffrey in that deal. And they do have Chuba Hubbard behind him, who was a very, very productive back. So they have some leeway. I think maybe they move McCaffrey, Brian Burns, and 2 or 3 first and try to get Deshaun Watson. And that immediately, I mean, puts them as a contender and give some teams in the NFC some trouble because, like we've said a couple times now, the NFC is not super strong. I mean, you added Deshaun Watson and he hits his groove. They can really compete in the NFC. They can really compete.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, I'll add my team. Like, I know we just traded for Carson Wentz the day before. But if we can flip Carson Wentz and include him in the deal, I'll get him up out of there too. I want him in the first place. So I am very curious to see. But again, like, I'll just say, if I'm the owner of a team, or if I was the owner, and I'm probably biased, I'm a young black man, but if I have, obviously, a quarterback like Deshaun, you are aware of what's going on. And Kenny, to your point, if the issue was we didn't think anything criminal was coming, the civil still is, by all accounts, still very valid and up in the air. Mm-hmm. So for me, I don't see what really has changed outside of the criminal part going away. So if that wasn't a concern, then I would be more motivated. I would have been more motivated to make the deal before the criminal case came out, because now the value just went back up. When when there was still the criminal element and that part, I think that falls under the being able to be suspended and all of that. The civil part, I don't know if we've had a case in the NFL where a civil suit led to a suspension, usually it's something criminal.
Right.
So if the criminal was, I think I agree. I don't think a lot of people thought there was going to be a criminal case based on definitely the time frame and all this.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't understand what owners and GMs were thinking. Like, buy low, even if you shelf them, force Goodell to either suspend them or not. I didn't understand why Houston didn't force Goodell's hand. Like, that's your job, make a decision. But as far as we're concerned, he's innocent. He's our guy. We know him. We trust his character. And we're going to stick by him. And if it comes out that we were wrong, then you cut bait. But to just sit him so that he technically hasn't even served a potential suspension, that could hang over his head if whoever else is getting him. And now I think to like I said, I think the value just went back up. Like, there was a time you would have never, and up until that criminal thing, I don't think anybody in their mind thought the Panthers would be willing to trade Christian McCaffrey, a potential MVP, for Deshaun Watson. Like, that Watson's value was low. But now it's a bidding war, because I think there are a lot more teams that haven't been reported that will be interested. And now you're competing with potentially 10 to 15 other teams when you could have got them versus one or two. And I just don't know if it was a collective agreement or if they just all dropped the ball, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I may be wrong on this, but weren't the Texans asking him to play and he was sitting out, like he didn't want to play? Or is that not correct?
No, they sat him out.
Okay,
but I think the other part is
he requested the trade, but he was willing to play.
Yeah, they decided to sit him out. But I think the other part of it, Ray, is I think teams are also potentially concerned about backlash. When there's that criminal element still, up in the air, I think that led to, teams maybe kind of having some, cold feet because they're worried about maybe the backlash from, trading for a guy like that. Especially when it's sexual assault with an issue like that. When that's still, up in the air, I think teams may have been worried about a potential backlash of bringing the guy in, kind of almost like the Ray Rice situation, as to, which is totally different when we actually had something on tape where people knew. But I think just having that potential or the possibility of it being a potential criminal situation, I think teams were a little leery on having a guy that would be considered to be a criminal, offender or something like that, and bringing them in via trade. I think some teams were concerned about that.
If this was any other league, Kenny, I might go there with you. But the NFL has a crazy history.
Oh no, I understand. I'm just saying, these teams are they'll pick and choose when they want to be morally responsible.
Right.
Yep.
But wish them the best. Hopefully, something good does come of it. But we're going to pivot a bit to, we had some history in the NBA, and because of the performance that came with it, I feel like it fell kind of flat. But James Harden is number 3 all time in 3-pointers made, passing Reggie Miller, which again, it seems like that should be a really big deal, but it just doesn't feel like it. But I'll kind of turn it over to you guys. What are you guys' thoughts on Harden becoming the number 3 all-time 3-point shooter? I'll start with you, Sean.
So yeah, you're right. It doesn't feel like it is a big deal, but it doesn't feel like as big a deal as it should. And I think a big part of it is what a lot of people have said multiple times over is Steph Curry and this whole new era of basketball is much different. I mean, there's way more threes attempted. Almost every player on the floor can shoot threes at this point. I mean, it wasn't always like that. I mean, even your big man can shoot threes at this point. So now it's a big thing for Harden, but I think there's just another thing is there's just so much that was going on with Harden this year with wanting to get traded and not getting along with Kyrie. It kind of overshadows how good he really is on the floor when he's actually like playing and he's in his rhythm. So, I mean, congrats to him, by the way. I mean, that's a big thing. Reggie Miller, one of the best to ever do it, especially shooters. So it's a big thing, but I do believe it gets overshadowed because of the era of the NBA now, with more threes being attempted and threes being shot, and your leading scorer takes almost every single shot every night. So, I mean, it's a big thing, but it falls to the wayside.
Kenny?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think one, I think it was because the game was a dud, because it was such a a non-competitive game that took away from it. And I think the other thing is that because he just got there, I think that may have been a reason why it wasn't as celebrated. I think if he's still in Houston, then they make a huge deal out of this. But the fact that he's on his third team in 3 years, I think that kind of took a little steam out of it. So I think it was a combination of those two things as to why it wasn't as recognized.
No, I agree. I think that's a really good point, Kenny. I didn't think about the tenure. I also think it's the person. I think if this is Trey Young, I think if this is somebody else that's maybe been a little bit more celebrated, if Devin Booker does this, someone like that, I think it's looked at differently. I think because of Harden's reputation, which I think has taken a huge hit in the last 2 to 3 years, people aren't going to rally around him. Even leading up, like I was shocked when I think it was the game before when they were talking about how close he was. Like he's passed almost everyone. And there's been, I mean, you see the games where he'll have 8 or 9 threes in the last couple of years, but it just didn't, I don't think, register and resonate. And I think a lot of it's because of him. Like, and then like to your point, following that Brooklyn blowout, and then I think it was against Orlando, like it just was really bad timing on a lot of different ways. And just to be honest, I think it was the wrong person. And so I think James Harden has a long way to go to rehabilitate himself. I think it was on this show when we were talking about after the blowout, he was in the club with Lil Baby, Meek Mill, and Travis Scott. Like, that's not
right on brand.
Yeah, right on brand, of course. But I think those things are all playing a role. So I think it's unfortunate to a certain extent because it should be a huge accomplishment even in today's NBA. But I just think like it was a perfect storm of a bunch of things that kind of downplayed it. And if we could watch out, like Steph's up like 400 or 500, I believe. But if for whatever reason he was to have an injury, Harden has quite a few years left in him to play. So I think those two are going to put up some huge numbers, and the Donovan Mitchells and Trae Youngs. And I was actually even surprised that he was so far ahead of Damian Lillard. I would have thought Damian had more threes just off the top of my head than Harden, but apparently not.
I wish Clay had missed all that time. He'd be
Clay,
as well.
For sure. The other historic accomplishment, I won't do that. I'll give it its proper due.
I already know where you're going.
In another, I don't want to call it meaningless game, but again, that was not super competitive or highly sought after. LeBron James accomplished a feat that had never been done. Definitely something to be worthy of. 10,000 points, rebounds, and assists. I know he signed the ball after the game with it. Obviously, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's definitely a longevity award, but that speaks to his longevity. In 2 50-point games at his age and his years, even against the talent, which was not great because we've seen him. The next when he had to play Phoenix, it was a little different for him. But nonetheless, huge accomplishment to LeBron James. Kenny, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's just, it just speaks of the skill level. It speaks of the IQ. It speaks of like you said, the longevity, just the high level of basketball he's been able to maintain over these 19 years. It's just a great accomplishment. He's in an exclusive club. He's one of one. And probably once this is all said and done, he's going to be a 1-on-1 in terms of being he has a chance to go down as not only the game's all-time leading scorer, but he could end up being top 5 all-time in assists. before it's all said and done. And that's just an incredible accomplishment. So it's hats off to him. I feel bad for him in terms of the success he has been able to have in terms of the team this year, but nonetheless, it doesn't take away from what he's accomplished, and it's a great accomplishment for a great player.
Sean?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, it sucks that it's happening with his team is ninth in the West right now. I mean, nobody expects a LeBron-led team to be there, but it speaks to his longevity. It speaks to how good of condition he's kept his body in and his mind, and how he's kept all the criticism away, and he's been a model on and off the court. I mean, I have nothing but respect for LeBron, and it's a huge accomplishment. And he's 1A, 1B, however you want to compare him, the best to ever do it. And he's going to continuously break records for as long as he can play, probably until his son gets into the league for 1 year, and then he'll check out. But yeah, it just speaks to his body of work over 19 years, as you said. It's actually really incredible that he's still playing at this level most nights. I mean, he takes some nights off, but he's still playing at this level at his age. I mean, he gets a little upstart because he was able to come out of high school, and you're not allowed to do that anymore. But it's an incredible feat. It's an incredible feat. I can't take anything away from that.
Yeah. No, definitely something that I think definitely when you look back at the numbers, it's going to be incredible when I don't know if you guys have kids, but when my kids are having the conversation and you just look at the raw numbers, it is going to be something definitely to marvel at. So congratulations to him on his accomplishment. Obviously more to come on all fronts. Hopefully he continues to stay healthy. I do want to touch on something that happened after that Phoenix blowout, where Anthony Davis made a statement. And his statement was basically, if I was there last year, he definitely feels like they beat Phoenix. Devin Booker, as the classy gentleman that he is, basically laughed it off. But do you guys feel like that is delusion that is par for the course of the Lakers? Or do you think they truly believe that would have been the case, and if they're healthy, they are a finals contender? I'll start with you, Sean.
I believe that they probably do believe that is the case. But, I mean, for Anthony Davis to come out and say something like that, it's not like he's had one freak injury in his whole career. I mean, he's injured every other month. So for him to come out and say something like that is pretty insane. Now, if LeBron was hurt and it was something like that, and he came out and said it would be something different. But, yeah, I don't think they would have. I don't think they would have beat the Suns either way, honestly. But I mean, they may have had a better chance. But for Anthony Davis to come out and say that, I don't think he should even be saying anything like that. I think he should be just working on getting healthy and keeping the Lakers out of the spotlight as much as he can, because he doesn't have the room to be talking like that when he's hurt literally 4 times a year, and he's a lot of the reason why his team is in the position they're in right now anyway. So it's just a shame to come out and say something like that, honestly.
Kenny?
Yeah, I just think you make a great point about in terms of if this was LeBron saying that, it would be totally different in terms, because he's so injury prone. Like, you're the last person that needs to be making that statement. But I will say this: as an athlete, that's what you're supposed to think. Mm-hmm. That if I'm there, then I'm going to make that much of a difference, and we will win the series. Is it reality? Probably not. And probably would have been closer. Where they lost in 5 games, I think it was. Maybe they win another game. Maybe it goes 6 or 7. But I still think Phoenix would have won that series. I just think that the chemistry that they have, the way that they play together, the way they play defense, I just think they would have beaten the Lakers regardless. Because LeBron wasn't healthy either. So and that's another part that doesn't make sense, like why he was saying that, like, because LeBron was hobbled in that series as well. So I don't know why he was, just an athlete, and you have a little bit of delusion in when you're an athlete in terms of irrational confidence sometimes. So I think this is just a case of irrational confidence, and D Book, he was totally right. Like, why would you even acknowledge that? We're not talking about ifs or maybes and what could have been. We're going to deal with reality. So that was the perfect response to it.
Then he acts like, wasn't Chris Paul hurt in that series? he just went on JJ Redick's podcast and said he couldn't even shoot a basketball. They shouldn't even have been covering him in the two
I
closing
think his
games.
hand was messed up.
Or
Yeah,
his shoulder or something like
couldn't
that,
move
yeah.
his finger. So I mean, that's like saying if Chris Paul was 100%, then we would have beat you
Right.
guys in 4 games. I mean, it's just a lot of what ifs, but it's part of the
Yep.
game. It's just
Yep.
stupid to even say that.
And more stupid news as far as I'm concerned. The mayor of New York continues to make headlines for, let's call it, questionable decision making and reasoning. He was doing some kind of speaking engagement recently, and someone yelled out, obviously, let Kyrie play. His response was, Kyrie can play as soon as he gets vaccinated. Kyrie was present at the Nets' most recent game, and because he apparently bought, according to reports, a courtside seat, which I would think the Nets
which is
find.
not true.
Okay, I was gonna say because the Nets should be able to find him a seat for
those
free.
those seats.
But be that as it may, on top of that, they were fined. I believe it was $50,000 for Kyrie going into the locker room. So I guess my question for you guys is, what are we doing, and when does this chaos end? I'll start with you, Kenny.
I don't know. Like this thing just gets like dumber and dumber like by the day. It totally makes no sense. So let's just start at the beginning. Like, how is he able to be in the arena but not be on the court? Like that's the first part. And then the second part is that if the mayors are talking about, or people are talking about the fact that private employees that they've lost their job because they didn't get vaccinated, so change the rule and give these people their jobs back. Like, we're acting like this is such a hard thing to do. Like, and it's not like it's not the right thing to do. That's the thing that really puzzles me. Like, here we are, we're supposedly on the other side of this pandemic. Everything is opening up. In New York, you're able to go inside restaurants now, and you don't have to wear masks inside restaurants, and everybody's outside, quote unquote. And now you're sitting here telling us that the guy can come to the arena, but he can't play. So it's just silly. And to me, Eric Adams is doing some posturing here because, again, if the issue is in terms of the other private employees that are not working because they aren't vaccinated, it's an easy fix. Just change the rule and give these people their jobs back, because people stood out and people have, lost their incomes. People have lost their opportunities to work because, they made a personal decision. And, the fact of the matter is that we all know that being vaccinated does not guarantee you immunity from this disease. It's been proven time and time again. So, we just need to stop and get off this, whether it's a political soapbox or whatever the mission is. Like, let's just stop this already, because this just made it this is turning into a sham now. So now the guy's going to sit courtside at every game. You're going to tell us now in the playoffs you're going to be sitting courtside while these guys are playing? Like, come on, man. Just change the rule, change the ordinance, change the statute, whatever you want to call it. Fix it, give people their jobs back, and get Kyrie back on the court. Everybody wants to see the man on the court. Like, knock it off.
John?
I'll say I honestly, Kyrie may have done some weird stuff with saying the world's flat and stuff, but I respect him 100% for standing his ground on this throughout the entire process. And now I feel like the mayor he just doesn't want to let Kyrie win, because he knows it's wrong at this point. He has to know it's wrong at this point. When KD came out after the game and called him out, he's 100% rightfully to do so. And then Michael Wilbon attacks KD. This is all just becoming like a media thing. They have to have something to talk about. It makes no sense. He can play away games like great with his team, but he can't go in the locker room with his team during a home game without getting fined. But he's in the arena. It is honestly completely and utterly ridiculous at this point. They're trying to make an example out of Kyrie at this point, and it's really sad to see. And I hope he continues to stand his ground, and I hope he's able to win in the end, because it's just honestly a pathetic thing to see right now.
No, I think that I can't agree with you guys more. I think the other thing was, like, even LeBron came out, and we know that their history and what it's been, but at this point, it's almost undermining the message because it's making a mockery of what should be a real situation. Kyrie took this stance, and I think this is part of his issue because he said he wanted to speak up for the people that lost their jobs because of the vaccine. And so now it's like, we are going to put the screws to you because you took that stand. Regardless of reason and logic, none of that matters because we're trying to make a point that isn't landing or resonating with anyone. Like, anyone with a functioning brain can see how dumb this is and has been for quite some time. Like, even him being part-time in other states, but not in the same state, but other unvaccinated people from other teams that work in a different state can come and play. Like, it's just buffoonery at its finest. And I don't know. I'm surprised that the NBA and their owners and their backers haven't applied more pressure, because this seems like a pretty easy fix that someone can make a call and get this done pretty quickly. So that to me is also surprising. And an unrelated event, like NBA Youngboy, who's a really popular artist, should be in jail, but his record label said, we need him out of jail. And he was out. Meek Mill was in jail. Robert Kraft showed up. Meek Mill was no longer in jail. So I know the people of New York, there are enough people in power to make this happen and get this fixed. But this mayor's just stubborn for whatever reason. And I really hope eventually he gets off of his moment, because it obviously brings attention to him. I don't think it's positive, and I don't think it helps him in a re-election. But here we are, and hopefully we get this taken care of soon, because we've seen what Kyrie can do. He's been amazing the last week or two for sure when he's been able to play. But down the stretch, they still could be in very much danger, because we saw what it took for them to beat the Knicks. It took a heroic effort from Kevin Durant, and they almost lost that game even when they were up. So they are not out of the woods by any stretch in guaranteeing themselves a playoff slot, as the Knicks have been on the rise and other East teams down there at the bottom are starting to, put it together here in these last couple games. So hopefully, God forbid, they would miss the playoffs or be stuck in a play-in game. And if they're the 8 seed, they would have a home game and he wouldn't be able to play in their play-in game. Like, I think that would just be absolutely an awful situation if they lost a play-in game because he couldn't play because they were at home. And then in a couple weeks after the season or whatever reason, the mandated rules change, because we've seen that happen.
New York will go crazy.
I think the NBA has to step up before the playoffs, because nobody wants to. You want the Nets to be at full.
You want everybody to be at full strength.
Full capacity. They got Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is going to be back. They got Kyrie there. They're going to go from being like what are they now? Whatever seed they are now, to being one of the harder teams to beat, especially if Kyrie and Ben Simmons can play. I think the NBA has to step in and push something, because they've done a very good job at being like a players' league. Like they look out for their players for the most part, probably better than any other league in the whole sports. And so they got to step in and they got to defend Kyrie, because it's like it's getting really, really, really ridiculous, and it's a power trip at this point.
Yeah. So definitely, hopefully that situation gets resolved here quickly. But fellas, I definitely appreciate you guys tuning in here on this Monday. We got some great games on right now. If you guys are watching, the Spurs and Timberwolves, our 6-point game. We just had the Warriors and the Wizards kickoff. Bad loss by Washington the other night. 2 bad losses, actually, as we were supposed to be making a run here, but we are running in the wrong direction. And then I believe on ESPN, it's Milwaukee and Utah. Utah's been pretty up and down as well. And Milwaukee's been up and down too. So very interesting times, but we got some great games for you guys. So we gave you guys some time back. Please enjoy your night. Stay safe. Drink or do whatever you do responsibly, and have a good night.
Whole sports, all plays. Whole sports, all plays. Whole sports, all plays. 365 5, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you to the days. Great, I ain't